Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's virtual plant clinic. My name is Bill Lester. I'm with University of Florida IFAS Extension Service in rainy Hernando County, and I am all by myself today. Lily, our Florida Friendly Landscape Coordinator, was going to be here with me today, but she wasn't able to make it. Fortunately, I still have power and I still have internet for the moment. If I disappear for some reason, because a big gust of wind came through, please understand. Hopefully, most of you still have power and internet, and everybody is well and doing okay. I guess, it's kind of one of our hurricane slash tropical storm special episodes. It always seems that these things come through on Thursdays for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I'm here today at the home studio. Our offices are currently closed today, as is most of the rest of Hernando County government. So, like I said, hopefully everybody is safe and well and inside and just kind of watching the dreary day. It looks like it's about 8 o'clock at night outside. It's so dark. As always, if you have any questions or comments at all, go ahead and put them in the chat box in the comments, and I'm more than happy to answer everybody's questions if you have any today. Respond to your comments, show your comments. I really had nothing special planned for today, so think up a lawn and garden question just to post and ask me, and we'll see if we can get an answer to you. Let me go ahead and share a few things with you. If you ever have a lawn and garden question, so if you can't really think of one today, but one pops into your head tomorrow, or your beloved hibiscus or azalea is damaged from the winds, or anything happens outside, please feel free to go ahead and shoot me an email. That is by far the best way to get in touch with me. It's wlester@ufl.edu, showing it there on the screen. And send pictures. I tell people there's no such thing as sending too many pictures. The more pictures that you send of your problem, the easier it is for us to figure out what is wrong. And probably 9 times out of 10, we can answer your question or your problem or diagnose things from good pictures. So as a general rule, if it's a plant, a tree, a bush, palm tree, we get a lot of palm tree questions. Get pictures from far away that shows the entire tree. Get pictures from a little bit closer. Get pictures from very close up. Sometimes people will send a picture of just a single leaf, and now we don't have any idea what the whole plant looks like. They send a picture of the whole plant, and what we really need is a close-up of what's happening on that one leaf, a leaf spot, an insect, something like that. So send lots of pictures. Here we go. We have our first question of the day from Shannon. Shannon's asking how to help your plants recover better post-wind damage. That's a very good question and very timely also. It depends on what kind of plant we're talking about and how much damage it took. As a general rule, otherwise healthy, appropriate trees, when I say appropriate, they're either native trees or appropriate trees for whatever part of Florida you live in, are going to be fine on their own. If you get a broken branch or any damage to your tree or your shrub, that individual branch may need to be pruned off. Things start to get difficult when you have a large plant or small tree or even a large tree that is blown over partly and now it's leaning over. Sometimes the roots on one side will actually pop out of the ground. That's very difficult. Obviously, you can try to put it back in the ground. You could try to push it back down, straighten it up. You may need to stake it up. And a lot of times those plants will recover on their own, but sometimes they don't. And it's really hard to say which ones are going to survive and which ones aren't. One very important thing to keep in mind whenever we have any kind of hurricane, tropical storm, really, really huge rain event, if you have plants and trees and different things growing on your property and you suffer a flood event, which you get a huge amount of rain, you live near a creek or a river and it rises up, Now your yard is underwater for 1, 2, 3 days, it may be longer. That is going to cause a huge amount of damage that there's not a lot you could do about. What we do see happen is trees and larger plants will become flooded and they're sitting in standing water for days on end. The water always eventually drains, it always eventually dries up, and the tree may look okay. It's like, oh, okay, the tree's hanging in there, hanging tough. Don't really notice a whole lot of damage to it. Sometimes the roots will become damaged, and now that tree will start to show damage 1, 2, maybe 3 years down the road. So it can be a little deceptive. You might think if my tree gets flooded, it's going to die within a day, a week, maybe 2 weeks tops. Nope. Sometimes it'll take a full 2 or 3 years for the damage to show, because what happens is the roots become waterlogged and damaged and the roots begin to die. But a tree has a huge root system. So the root system starts to die bit by bit by bit over time. Eventually the roots get to the point where it can't support the tree. The tree may start to lose some leaves. A lot of times it starts from the very top. Tree might start to lose its leaves at the wrong time of year. The leaves are going to turn brown. Damage might show up on one side of the tree or the other. A lot of different things could happen, but eventually your tree is going to become weakened, start to show damage. And at that point, there's nothing you can do. You can't go back and fix the roots or undo the damage that they sustained from a flooding event. So unfortunately, we see a lot of tree damage that way. If you have very, very sandy soil, this is the time of year and the opportunities where it comes in really handy. Because I know in my yard, if we get a ton of rain and the water starts to build up, as soon as it stops raining, about 10 minutes later, it's all gone. It all goes straight into my very, very sandy soil, and I don't have flooding issues here on my property. If you live near a waterway, near a retention pond, a creek, a river, of course, your situation is going to be very, very different. Stephanie's from Pinellas County. Good morning, Stephanie. How are you? Will my red pepper plant and eggplant recover from this wind? Yes, it should, as long as the stem is not snapped or broken. So generally, when you're growing peppers and eggplants, they get large enough where you're going to have to stake them with at least a small stake and tie them up the same way you would with a tomato plant. So if you have them staked up, or they're in a spot where they're not exposed to too much wind, they're not blowing around or flopping around too badly, they'll be fine as long as the stem doesn't completely snap. Now, sometimes these plants, a small branch might snap and get damaged. You're probably going to lose that little branch. You're probably going to have to prune it off. Go out there as soon as it's safe to do so and as soon as the rain is done. And if you have any harvestable peppers or eggplants or whatever it might be, go ahead and pick them down, because if the plant got a lot of really bad damage, you might lose a branch or two, and you want to go ahead and get those peppers and eggplants now while you can. Monique, good morning. How are you? And Cindy is here from stormy Largo. That's south of us. I guess you're seeing about the same kind of weather that we are. It's been really breezy, steady breezy since yesterday morning. Not to the point where it's damaged anything in my yard. I noticed this morning a couple of dead palm fronds have blown off the tree, which is fine. Saves me from having to get up there and trim them off. Other than that, other than steady breeze, leaves blowing around, I think my trash can got blown over. I need to pick it up a little bit later on. We haven't seen any damage. Hopefully Largo won't see any damage either. And Shannon said that she put in some spinach transplants, celery, cabbage, broccoli, and romaine 2 weeks ago. So Shannon, obviously you've been watching our classes and following our advice about planting the correct kind of things for this time of year. So those are all really good choices for putting in right now this time of year. In my garden, I planted celery seeds. They're not up yet. I have broccoli plants going. They look great. I have lettuce and romaine up. They need to be transplanted into the garden probably this weekend. So both of us are right on schedule. Um, but Shannon says that on Tuesday her spinach was eaten to a nub. I didn't take a picture and couldn't find any culprits. Any specific spinach eaters I should look or treat for when I put in the next batch? That's a good question. And the one thing that I could think of that would do that is a caterpillar. A lot of times, if you just put in transplant plants, spinach, broccoli, potentially lettuce, any of those are very small. So a caterpillar is going to come along, eat the whole thing, and keep on going. If you have a much larger plant and you have a caterpillar problem, you can go out there and notice missing leaves, chewed up leaves, and start looking through the plant, turning over leaves, and actually find the caterpillar. If you send us a picture, we can give you an idea of pretty much what kind of caterpillar it is, but it really doesn't matter what species of caterpillar it is, it's damaging your plants. So there are controls you can use if you have caterpillars on a larger plant. A lot of times on a smaller plant, the caterpillar will come and go. There are caterpillars that live primarily in the mulch or leaf litter around your garden. They tend to come out at night and they're going to feed on your plants and then just keep on going. Um, Little hard to completely protect your plants from them. If you are having a major problem with them, if you spray your plants right after you transplant them and put them in the ground with either BT or spinosad, it will kill the caterpillars. But sometimes the caterpillars will eat your plants and then die, which doesn't really help your plants a whole lot. There's a couple little tricks when you put transplants in the ground to help protect them from caterpillars. The one type of caterpillar that lives in the leaf litter and comes out at night, they're called cutworms. If you look them up online, you'll see pictures of them. They're very dark colored caterpillars. There's a black cutworm and a couple of other species. They grow up to be little moths, but they will eat your plants in the middle of the night. They tend to cut them off right at ground level, eat the leaves, and then keep on going. So try treating with either BT or spinosad right when you put them in the ground. Otherwise, you're just going to have to be diligent and try to keep an eye on them. Like I said, a trick that some people will use is you can use little protective, make a little ring to go around the plant when you first put it in the ground to block the caterpillar from getting to it. People will make them from uh, toilet paper tubes, the little cardboard tube in the center. You can make it out of paper towel tubes. So maybe save some of those little cardboard tubes, cut them up into a little short section, and use it as a ring around your plant to help protect it from caterpillars. That can be pretty effective. Sometimes the caterpillar might just crawl over the cardboard and still get in and cause damage, but really that's about your only solution for that problem. Stephanie, good morning. Stephanie asks, I was thinking of planting a Chaya or Mexican spinach tree. What is your opinion of the tree? I have not grown that myself personally. I know it's a very popular kind of oddball vegetable. So Chaya or Mexican spinach it could be a small tree, it could be a large shrub. Once it grows some and becomes mature, and you're going to pick the leaves and eat them. And it's supposed to taste like spinach. It's kind of a spinach substitute. My one warning for things like this that maybe you hear of, but you've never tried before, try to find a way of getting a hold of some and trying it first, because a mistake that people make, whether it's a vegetable garden or planting something in your yard, is you'll try planting, what's a good example? Radishes are probably a good example. I love radishes. My wife likes radishes. So when I grow radishes, we don't worry about eating them because we both like them. But if you've never eaten a radish before and you plant a great big section in your garden of radishes, because you hear they're easy to grow, and they are, and they grow very quickly, they mature really quickly, and they do. Only takes maybe 30 days from planting the seed to picking the radish if you do it the right time of year. If you hate radishes, now you're stuck with a ton of radishes that either your neighbors like them, or hopefully you have a friend that likes them, a coworker. Otherwise, you're stuck with radishes and turns out you don't like them. So before you try planting Chaya or Mexican spinach, try to find somebody or that has it. I've never seen them at the grocery store. You may be able to find it at a real specialty grocery store. Like I said, I've never really seen it before. You may want to try it first to make sure you like it before you plant a bunch. But trying to grow one, it's not going to hurt. If you grow it, you pick it, you eat it. It's like, yeah, I don't really like this. It's not that big of a loss. You could probably find somebody else who would like it. But they do well here. Corey says that he grows Chaya. It needs to be prepared properly, not in an aluminum pot. That's a good tip. I didn't know that. It has cyanide precursor and off-gases cyanide. So keep that in mind. When cooking it, you probably want to look online and make sure that you get recipes and information from a reputable source about how to prepare it and eat it and what you can do with it. I know you can find a lot of information online with different recipe ideas. And Corey says, this is something I knew also. It dies back about half the winters because of the cold. So it is cold sensitive. You're going to have to cover it, keep it warm. We do have fairly warm winters where these types of plants aren't really going to suffer a lot of damage anyway. But other years we have really cold winters, and something like Chaya could be frozen all the way to the ground. But it is pretty popular. A lot of people grow them and like them. Milena is here, obviously from around Williston. Good morning, Milena. And she asks, will a fig or olive tree do well in Williston? Yes, they will. And if you look online, University of Florida has a lot of information on fig trees. They have all the different varieties that are going to do well. Most varieties of figs do well here in Central Florida. Some do a little bit better than others. I know the Turkish brown ones and most of the others are going to do well. Something you want to keep in mind with figs, though, if you get a fig and you plant it in the ground in your yard, if you have a nematode problem really bad, nematodes are a major pest of figs. And what happens is your fig tree does really well the first year. If it gets new leaves, it grows, gets bigger. But then the nematodes start to impact it and damage the roots. And over the next couple of years, it kind of declines and will eventually die. But figs don't get really huge, so they can be grown very easily in a very large container. So think about putting your fig in a container with good quality potting soil, and that way you can kind of get around the nematode problems if you have them in your yard. Not everybody does. And olives, look online and look up University of Florida olives. They have a lot of information. They've done a lot of work in recent years looking at all the different varieties of olives, because there's like 1,000 varieties of olives around the world. A lot of them do very, very well here in Florida. Some of them don't. But they're in the process of going through all of them to figure out which ones do the best in different parts of Florida and which ones you probably don't want to try growing because they just don't do well here. And I don't know the name of the company or the farm, up in North Florida or Southern Georgia, there is a huge olive farm, grove, company, and they grow a ton of olives, and they turn a lot of them into olive oil. They sell the olive oil. They have a very large store. They sell it online. So olives could do very well in Williston also. And Corey says the LSU figs are nematode resistant if you decide not to grow them in a pot. That's a good point. I know that I didn't know that LSU was doing research on figs. I'm sure they are. Most universities, somebody there is doing work on figs because figs are a very popular crop and very healthy for you. They are always with every kind of fruiting tree, they're always looking for either natural nematode resistance, so they're looking at a variety that resists nematode damage. And for a lot of other crops, they'll find one variety where the roots are nematode resistant. And then they go ahead and mate them with another variety, and they try to impart the nematode resistance from the one variety into a tastier variety. So yeah, try looking online. The University of Florida is probably working on nematode resistant figs also. But I know that you can successfully grow them in a container. It has to be a big container though. So think whiskey barrel. You should be able to find them at the stores. The wooden whiskey barrels. It really was technically a barrel that they made whiskey in and then cut it in half, or a container about that size. So I would guess about a 20-gallon pot or larger should be fine for a fig. And Corey says, Arbequina olives are the only ones I know that they have decent production in Central Florida, but it could take more than a few years. I know I had to go out and look at somebody's yard. They had a problem with their palm tree right here in Spring Hill, which is in Hernando County, just north of the greater Tampa Bay area. And I went and looked at their palm tree, and it had a disease. It was going to die, unfortunately. But they had another tree, and I'm standing next to it. And I said, "What is this?" They said, "That's our olive tree. We've had it for about 3 or 4 years." Olive trees are very, very attractive. The leaves are small, but it's almost like a silvery green. They're very, very attractive in a landscape, and theirs look extremely healthy. And I started looking through it, and it actually had olives on it. They're small, they're about marble size at that point. It had just flowered maybe a month earlier and actually set a crop of olives on it. And the homeowner hadn't even noticed it. They said, "Oh, wow, it's been here, I think, about 4 years." And those were the first olives they've ever gotten on it. So olives are definitely, if nothing else, if you plant and grow a healthy olive tree, they're very attractive and kind of, there aren't many silvery green landscape plant choices out there to put in your landscape. So kind of does double duty between looking good and being potentially productive also. So hey guys, if you have any other questions, just go ahead and throw them in the chat. If you would ever like to contact our office, there is our phone number. I'm obviously not at the office today. Nobody is there today. We are closed today. And tomorrow we are closed for a holiday, but we will all be back there on Monday morning. So please feel free if you need to call the office. Like I said, the best way to get in touch with me is through email. And if you have any really difficult questions that you want to answer to, go ahead and send them to Lily, because I mean, Lily couldn't be here with us today to answer them in person. So just send the really tough ones to her. Send her lots and lots of pictures also. It makes it a little bit easier for her to figure out what's going on and answer the question. And unfortunately, if it is a tricky question, she just forwards it to me. So I seem to end up with all of them in the end anyway. But if you are ever interested, if you have not had a chance to catch one of our online classes, you need to do so. If you go to this website, this web page that is scrolling along the bottom here, www.hernandoextension.com, that has a listing of all of our classes that are coming up. So when we plan out a class, we make the arrangements, we create a link, everything else, a day, a time. We always put it on our Facebook page, and we always make an event for it. So one way you can follow us is on Facebook and go to the events, and you're going to see everything that we have coming up. If you don't want to do that, or if you don't like Facebook or you're not on Facebook, that's fine. That is fed automatically. It takes about 24 hours for it to feed through, but it ends up eventually on hernandoextension.com. So that's just a freestanding web page that you can go to. And that has all of our different activities, classes. We will have a lot coming up after the new year. Um, really, gosh, not too deep into January for all practical purposes. We start spring here in Central Florida. So we're going to have a lot of classes. We are going to have our Arbor Day celebration and tree giveaway at our nursery. We're in the process of pulling all that together and picking a date and time and everything else. Speakers, we are going to be giving away free trees again. So the best way to keep on top of what we're doing and get information about that is just follow on hernandoextension.com. So what else do we have here? Melena, you're very welcome. Like I said, University of Florida has a lot of information. They have a number of people who have worked with olives exclusively over the last couple of years. And yes, Lily did have to cancel. I think that was for today. Maybe it was for yesterday. I can't remember. She had a in-person class at the Spring Hill Library. She had to cancel because of the weather. So my guess is the libraries are probably closed today anyway. So wouldn't have been able to meet and do that anyway. So guys, I think we're going to try to keep it a little bit short today. So far, my electric has been hanging tough there. I still have internet. Our power did kind of pop on and off very, very quickly earlier today. So what happens is the battery backup starts to beep and the lights flicker and, you know, everything kind of breaks loose here. Sharon has a question here. And Sharon has a pink grapefruit tree and she got lots of fruit this year. That's great. We see very little citrus being grown by homeowners in their yards anymore, mostly because of citrus greening. A lot of people lost their trees. So Sharon, citrus greening is out there. It's lurking out there. Your tree may never get it, but one day your tree may get it. So it's always kind of something to keep in mind. But that's great that your tree does not have it, because it looks like, you know, you got a really good crop this year, which means your tree does not have greening yet. The size of the fruit is good. They're juicy, but not very sweet. What can I do for next year to make them better? And she lives outside of Brooksville in Brook Ridge. A lot of time, and this kind of is an old, I'm not going to say old wives' tale, and I think that it has been supported by research, but I'm not going to swear to that. So what makes citrus sweet is a touch of cold weather. So technically, for most of your citrus, a lot of people and a lot of old timers say, don't pick it until we get a cold snap, a cold night, a cold front, some cold weather. So a couple of cold nights helps to make citrus sweeter. It helps to make a lot of different greens taste better. So people who have grown collard greens, mustard greens, turnip greens, those kind of things for many years will tell you that cold weather helps to make them taste better. So Sharon, because a lot of citrus, there really isn't one magic day when you have to pick it off. The fruit will come along and it will get ripe where you can pick it, but then there's a period of time where it can stay on the tree and still be good. And you kind of get to a last day on the open window where you want to kind of pick it by. So during the window, if you can leave it on until we experience a little bit more cold weather, that will help make it a little bit sweeter, probably. And of course, just good tree care. Fertilization is very, very important for citrus. And you always want to use a quality, which means expensive, use the good stuff, citrus fertilizer, because a good citrus fertilizer has all the micronutrients that a citrus tree needs. A very, very light scattering once a month. So do it on the first of the month from spring through fall. So really this is November. We're kind of after fertilizing season. Citrus trees aren't really growing right now. You really don't want to fertilize them until spring, but starting in March, very, very light scattering of citrus fertilizer once a month. keep them growing healthy, make sure they have all their nutrients. So between fertilizing and a couple of cold nights, that's the best you can do to help make citrus a little bit sweeter. Stephanie, you're very welcome. Looks like from the names we have a couple of either new viewers on here today, or they may be lurkers, people who've been watching for a while, but they've never been brave enough to ask a question. So if you're watching, please feel free to throw in a question, a comment. Let us know where you're watching from. We always like to keep on top of where our viewers are at. We have had people from out of state. We've had viewers from Central Georgia before. Of course, we have people from all over Florida. Lee is here today, tuning in a little late. Lee is down in Broward County, which is South Florida. And you're probably still getting rained on. You're probably still getting the back end of the storm right now. We're still getting the front end. I guess it's going to get as close to passing over me as it's going to get within a couple of hours here. Shannon is in West Pasco. That's great. We have a lot of people who contact our office from Pasco County, Citrus County. We're all pretty close. We're all kind of the same here. So, Evelyn is watching from Pinellas County. Good morning, Evelyn. And Evelyn loves to wash. See, that's a name I'm not familiar with. So, Evelyn, we have a lot of people from Pinellas County that come on and ask questions. And whenever you ask a question, if you're from outside of Hernando County, throw in where you're at, because that is going to kind of determine what kind of answer I give you. So, believe it or not, we're right here in Hernando County. There are a lot of plants that freeze every winter here, and you can grow them, but they're tough to grow. They're going to get a lot of cold damage. Down in parts of Pinellas County, they never or very, very rarely get damaged down there, and they grow great for you guys. Cardboard palm. So Evelyn, you might have a cardboard palm in your yard. They do great down there in Pinellas County. Here, technically a little bit too cold, a little bit too far north. And if you drive just a little bit further north of here, think Ocala, Marion County, you probably really can't grow them up there because they're going to get really badly damaged and freeze and die most winters. So it's amazing how you go just a little bit north of here, a little bit south, and growing things is very, very different for a lot of plants. So I'm always jealous of most of our Pinellas County listeners and people from a little bit further south of there, because you can grow all those South Florida palms. You can probably grow lychee, longan, mangoes, a lot of the South Florida fruit crops. Maybe they obviously don't grow as well there as they do in Miami, but you can grow them. Here, it's tougher. If we get enough cold during the winter, it gets really, really tough on them. So I'm jealous of you guys. So Shannon says, I've noticed that when I plant my radish from seed, they sprout, but never fruit. I'm direct sowing into the garden. Do I need to plant them deeper to start? Maybe. Radishes, you do need to plant a good 1/4 inch deep. So you need to cover the seed well. A couple of other things that we're planting this time of year, lettuce and carrots, plant very, 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 very shallow. You don't want to bury them deeply at all. Radishes have to grow when the weather is cool. So if you get a little jumpy and start them a little bit too early when the weather is still pretty warm, they'll sprout, they'll grow, but they really won't. They'll get a little skinny root, but they won't get the nice round radish root, which is what you're growing them for. So try planting them again. The weather will cool off here very, very soon. And the weather has to be cool enough to make them happy enough to make the nice round radishes. I just started my first crop of radishes. I planted them last weekend or the weekend before that. They're up, and I'm hoping that I didn't do it too early. But I know if I plant more in about a week or so, that should be like bullseye, right on the nose. Good time of year to plant them so that they're growing during the cooler weather, and I'm ideally going to get radishes. Kate, good morning. Kate is an FFL coordinator from our sister county, UF-IFAS Extension in Pasco County, and she has the luxury of time to tune in to today. Good morning, Kate. How are you? Um, we don't really know each other all that well, but I do work with very, very closely with Jim Mall and your county extension director, Whitney. Supposed to meet Whitney and Jim and a bunch of other people for lunch in December because we work together very closely on septic system education. Believe it or not, I get to teach a little bit of everything here. So, wow, unfortunately, Lily is not here today, but I have Kate from Pasco County tuning in. So I guess if I get any specific FFL questions I can't answer, I'll be asking Kate to help me out with them. Kate, we're going to have you on as a guest sometime. I have had Whitney on here before. I've had Jim Mall on here before. We've had a lot of people from Extension. I need to get more Extension people on here as guests. And Kate says, we're doing fine. Thank you. We always like that, those positive comments. Nice to meet virtually. Like I said, Kate, I'm going to write your name down here. So we'll shoot you an email and we'll get you on here as a guest sometime. All you need is a webcam, and I have a little clip-on webcam there, and a decent microphone so that we can hear you and you're not all scratchy and unintelligible. And that's all you need. So, and I think we're going to wrap it up here shortly. But let me mention, I was just thinking as I was starting on my annual paperwork the other day, that our virtual plant clinic, we have been doing this just about every week. Obviously, if Thursday falls on Thanksgiving or Christmas or a holiday, or if I'm out of town and Lily's out of town and everybody's out of town, we have had to cancel once or twice. But hey, even days when we got a hurricane blowing through, one of us is still on here answering your questions. We've been doing this for about 2.5 years at this point, and I believe our 3-year anniversary will be coming up in April. And I started thinking, we need to do something special for this. 3 years is pretty amazing. We doing something like this every week. And if you guys weren't on here asking questions and giving comments and tuning in, we would have quit doing this a long time ago. Because if Lily and I were just here talking to ourselves, there's not a whole lot of point to that. But without you guys, you're the ones who really make this possible, and you're the ones who really give us the reason to keep scheduling this and popping in here Thursday morning to answer your questions. So start looking forward to April. I'm going to be looking for suggestions. I think our celebration is going to involve a cake, and I think it's also going to involve having you guys come on here live to join us live, because I can email anybody a link where if you click on it and you have a camera and you have a microphone, I can let you in and you can have your own little box up on the corner, and we can have 10 people on here all at once. So we're going to start doing things like that, I think, in the coming new year, and definitely for April when we have our 3rd anniversary of doing this. I think I deserve an award from Extension for something like this. We're going to have to work on that. So, Cindy, thank you. Like I said, if it wasn't for you guys popping in and showing up and asking us questions every week, we would have run out of things to talk about. So we're coming up on about 10:40 at this point. So I think we're going to do this one last question from Evelyn, who is either a new listener or a lurker who has gotten over her shyness and is asking a question today. So Evelyn has a jasmine that grew well, but no flowers. If this is a night blooming jasmine, that can happen, and it's a genetic or specific variety thing. I have had night blooming jasmines in the past that grew really well, got really big, and flowered like crazy, and they smell great, and they flower at night. You walk out back, and it smells really not up. But Evelyn says no, so maybe it's not a night blooming jasmine. Any jasmine is going to be a full sun plant. So number one, it needs to be, it's really going to help if it's growing in a full sun location. That helps any flowering plant flower better unless it's a specific shade loving or requiring plant. Growing a healthy plant. So just the basics of irrigation, fertilizing, not too much, not too little, is also very important. And for a jasmine or anything like that, age is going to figure into it also. Some of them have to they have to be old enough to get to the point where they can flower. So plants will go through something called a juvenile period. Every fruit tree has a juvenile period. It could be a couple years long, it could be 10 years long before it gets to the age where it's capable of flowering, creating fruit, holding the fruit all the way through to picking it. So that can factor in with a lot of different plants, including jasmine. So if your jasmine she has some kind of variegated jasmine. Does that grow as a bush or as a ground cover or vine? Because a vine, if it's growing on the ground, it's a ground cover. So Lee down in Broward County says, will all this rain cause powdery mildew on my squash leaves? It very well might and could and maybe would. So if the weather is still on the humid side down there, all this rain and rain splash and humidity, if it's still fairly humid down there in Broward County, is going to really, really encourage fungal diseases, so powdery mildew and anything else. After the rain is gone, you probably want to hit your squash, cucumbers, melons, anything like that with a fungicide. It's really, really going to help. And that way, hopefully, you'll catch things on top of it instead of waiting another week or so and having a huge outbreak of it. So Evelyn said that it is a climbing vine. If it's like a Confederate jasmine type jasmine that grows as a climbing vine, it has to get old enough and it has to be growing in the full sun. Those are probably the two most important things to encourage flowering if it's a flowering variety. So double check that this is actually a variety that's going to flower. And if it's a Confederate jasmine type jasmine that is a climbing vine, they flower at a certain time of year. So generally in the spring, here in Central Florida, about May or so is when they flower. And a lot of times they're only going to flower once a year or for a fairly, finite period of time. So they're not going to bloom year round. So hopefully, if you're doing everything right, this coming May-ish, it'll flower then. And Evelyn says, yes, it is a Confederate jasmine. So if it's a type of jasmine that flowers, take good care of it. If it looks otherwise healthy and it's healthy and growing, don't over fertilize it with too much nitrogen fertilizer. That's going to make it grow lots of leaves and not grow a whole lot of flowers. Fertilizing it lightly just to keep it growing and otherwise taking good care of it will hopefully get it all set. And when the right time of year comes along, which, like I said, is about May or so for your standard traditional Confederate jasmines here in Central Florida, hopefully this year it'll flower. So Evelyn, thank you so much. Guys, I think we're going to wrap it up. And let me go ahead and throw my email address on here one more time. And very quickly, before I go, last thought of the day, we have a very, very short survey that we like people to take. It's just a couple questions. It's on a secure University of Florida survey site. It's through Qualtrics, which they use a lot for research, doing research surveys, but mine is very short. And everybody who's taken it before says it's very painless also. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that and put that in the comments. Also, and if you give me just a second here, I can go ahead, find where I put it, and I'll go ahead and put that in the comments for everybody. So if you're watching live, or if you're watching us after the fact, because these virtual plant clinics are recorded. We have a lot of people who watch us after the fact on Facebook. It's also saved to YouTube. I also save it and download it as a podcast. So no matter how you are watching us, whether you're watching us live or you're watching us 6 months from now, go ahead and feel free to go ahead and click on this link and take our very, very short survey. And we really appreciate that. That lets us know that we're doing something right. And you guys are all hopefully learning something from these, learning something from each other. And I can tell you that I learn something every Thursday when I'm on here. So you're learning something and you're actually implementing it. And hopefully your lawns and gardens and vegetable gardens are all going to look better and better and better. I know everything in my yard is going to look fantastic this weekend because we finally got some steady, long rain. I get so tired of having to go out there and water it, and I'm the worst at watering things on a really timely basis. So I always am very, very thankful for a good rain. So guys, we should be back here. We'll have somebody back here next Thursday at 10 a.m. to answer all of your questions and comments and learn from you. And hopefully you'll learn something from us. But be sure to tune back in next Thursday at 10 a.m. And until then, everybody, I hope you stay really, really safe out there and don't suffer any damage or fallen trees or flooding or anything from this weather. Don't worry, before you know it, it's going to be gone. And hopefully this weekend will be beautiful and you'll have a chance to get out there and work in the garden or go out and enjoy our beautiful fall heading into winter kind of weather. Monique, thank you very much. Yeah, the worst is still technically coming for Hernando, although sounds pretty quiet outside right now. I don't hear howling wind or anything at the moment. So until next week, thank you once again, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.